So first things first is how do you actually talk to the seller? I always use the Q framework, and that's just going to be the most natural way that you can actually talk to somebody. The last thing you want to do is like when someone says, "Okay, yeah, I want to sell," and then you dive right into being like, "Okay, well, why do you want to sell?" That's not relevant right now. So the easiest way is to use this framework and actually decide if it's going to be a good fit or not for you. So what does Q stand for? It has three different elements to it, and the first one is condition, which is essentially just what kind of condition the property's in. The next is urgency, which is just going to be like where you try to figure out why they actually want to sell it. And then you have expectations, which is just making sure that they're ready to make a decision and that they're not going to want some type of unrealistic price, right? Because the last thing you want to do is actually go out to an appointment and the seller tells you, oh, well, I'm not going to be ready to sell for another 6 months. Or even worse, I want $1 million for my property, even though it's only worth 300,000, right? So starting with condition, someone says that they want to sell their property, right? You reach out to them over the phone, or you already have them on a cold call, depending on how you're actually doing this. Um, they're going to say, what's your offer? And then you're just going to be like, well, can I ask you a few questions about it? So we're going to start off with condition, which is just going to be asking questions about what kind of shape the property is in right now. Um, so the way I would always start this is just, can I ask you a few questions about the place? And then they'll say, yeah, sure. And then you just kind of go through a checklist in a way. The major items in a house are going to be like the roof, the AC, the foundation, um, flooring, paint, kitchens, bathrooms, stuff like that. You just want to kind of get a feel for what kind of shape that the actual property is in. And the way I do it sometimes is I'll just ask them, can you tell me a little bit about the property and let them go through it, like what they think is relevant. And then you just kind of hit all the other little line items that I just mentioned. And from there, just be like, okay, so let me ask you something. What kind of what would it need to just be like HGTV ready, right? Like where it's just like a 10 out of 10, there's nothing wrong with the place whatsoever. And then just kind of get a feel for what it's going to take to actually get this property up to its ARV. So this is going to help you a lot in terms of actually getting your repair costs calculated and getting it calculated accurately. So it'll generally kind of go in a way that they'll kind of lie to you and just say, oh, this property doesn't need anything. It's in perfect condition. I've never done anything to it in terms of like renovations in the last 10, 15 years, but once again, it doesn't need anything somehow. Uh, so just know that that's generally not going to be true. And sellers are liars oftentimes in terms of not properly evaluating the property. So if you get a seller who's not telling you anything's wrong with the place, right? Like it's just in perfect condition. You want to kind of move on to urgency, which is why they need to sell. It can also go in a way to where they start talking about how, oh man, this place is falling apart on me. I just need to get out of it. It needs a new roof, a new AC. It's going to need a new kitchen, a bathroom. It's going to be a complete gut job. All right. My cousin Randy came in. He broke the toilet last time he was here. It's been leaking through the floor on the second story. So now the ceiling downstairs has like this giant water stain on it. Stuff like that. So in this case, we want to skip urgency because the house itself is motivated. They're not hiding why they actually want to move. It's very clear that they need to move. Why they want to move. The house is falling apart, right? So now let's move on to urgency. You want to try and figure out why they need to sell the house. Because remember, we don't want people who want to sell their house. We want people who need to sell their house. And there's a huge difference there. Everyone in the world wants to sell their house for the right price. What we want is someone who needs to sell their house for some type of extenuating circumstance, or if the house itself just needs a lot of work and they don't want to do it, something like that. You don't want to have a completely retail ready seller who's wanting to get the highest and best price for the property and then go out on an appointment with that, because unless you just get extremely lucky, what's going to happen is you're going to go out there and you're going to waste your time. And the last thing you want to do is to go out there and do that, right? So if they start saying that the property is in great condition, just be like, I'm a little confused. So it sounds like your house is in awesome shape. So why do you want to sell it? And then just kind of say it like that. You don't want to be like, well, what's your motivation to move out of the property? Like, no, don't do that. You want to ask with curiosity, not like, oh, I'm trying to think of a way to put it. You don't want them to feel like you're fishing for some way to take advantage of them, most importantly. You just want to have it be like it's a natural conversation that's flowing. Um, so one way you can do that is just by asking a question after you ask them, like, why do you want to sell it? So instead of just being like, well, why do you want to sell the property? Instead, be like, well, why do you want to sell the property? Do you have some kind of crazy neighbors or a sinkhole in the backyard or something? And, just something kind of lighthearted like that, where you're coming off almost like it's a joke, but like not really, where you're just trying to get an idea from them. So you want to be sure that you ask a question at the end of, like, after you ask them, why they want to sell. The reason for that is because it, one, gives them something to actually respond to that isn't just like a direct thing of like why they want to sell. So if you're like, does it have a sinkhole in the backyard or something? What they're going to say is, oh no, it's nothing like that. It's just, my mom, she's kind of going downhill right now, and I just want to get back up to wherever she lives so that way I can take care of her. And that's just kind of what you're looking for, right? So now let's move on to expectations. Okay, so this is how we handle expectations. We've gone through condition and urgency, so we kind of know what kind of shape the house is in. We know why they're actually looking to sell. And now we're getting into making sure you're not going to waste your time or theirs. So what we want to do here is make sure that they're willing to sell it to us at a wholesale price. We don't want to buy it retail because we're not going to be able to do anything. If we mess this up, we aren't going to be able to sell our contract, and you'll have done all this work for nothing. So you just want to kind of get a feel for it. Ask them, it sounds like your house is a good fit for us. If we're able to come to an agreement on price, how soon would you be looking to move? Okay? You want to try and find someone who wants to move within hopefully the next month or so. You don't want to deal with someone who wants to move in like 6 months. If that's the case, it's totally fine. You just want to keep following up with them, maybe once a month. Just check in with them, make sure that, their plans are kind of staying the same. And you just don't want to miss out on the deal because of that. But you don't want to go out there and check out the property today, because all they're going to do is leverage the offer that you give them into finding a better offer. So what I'm trying to get at here is you just want to find someone who's ready to make a decision, and is actually ready to move on to wherever they're going afterwards. So you can just be like, would you say is a month is enough time for you, or would you need more time for us to before we actually buy the property from you? So going back over expectations, yeah, if they need more than 30, 45 days, just tell them you'll call them back next month. Call back every few weeks, just so that way you stay on the radar. If they're ready to go, just ask one more question. Just be like, okay, that's awesome. I'd definitely like to come out and check out your property. I just want to make sure, though, I don't really know how to say this, but you don't think we're going to pay you like $1 million or some kind of outrageous amount for the property, right? And then just shut up and let them respond. So the reason I'm using $1 million is because the average home price in my market is like around 400,000. So most of the properties I'm talking to are like probably going to be worth like 250 to 300 in the shape that they're in, if it's actually a good wholesale deal. So the higher the number in your market, the higher you want to make that. Like if you're in San Francisco, there are probably a ton of houses that are worth $1 million, right? So you probably want to be like $10 million. Just make it some type of outrageous number. That way they don't get this feeling that you're going to lowball them, but you're just trying to make sure that they're going to be realistic whenever you get there. And that's all really. So once expectations have been established, it's time to go on an appointment, and or at least schedule it so that way you can get ready to go out there and make them an offer.